This is, well, let me start off with this because you are the core group of conservative thought, free market thought in the state of Texas, which obviously is important to me and important to the congressional delegation in which I serve, but really it's important to the country because as goes Texas, so goes the rest of the nation. There's been a lot of talk about members of the Texas delegation retiring from Congress. I probably weekly would have to deal with a story starting in the middle of August that I was retiring. I just want to say that I filed for re-election the first Saturday that the filing period was open, so that's done. But it was a little startling. I woke up one morning and I was the only Texan on the Energy and Commerce Committee that would be running for re-election. Both Mr. Flores and Mr. Olson had announced that they were not running for re-election. Those are the two other Texans. So everyone down the dais from me with less seniority was not going to be there in the next Congress. And then even more startling, the people up the dais from me also announced that they would not be running for re-election. So just so you're aware, because this group is so important and so influential, I am going to aggressively compete for the top spot on the Energy and Commerce Committee. My expectation is we will win the majority back. If you don't believe me, go over there and watch the impeachment hearings later on today. I believe Republicans are going to win the majority back, and so competition for that top spot on the committee will be competition for committee chair. Now, Texas has been fortunate the last 100 years. We've had a couple of pretty influential chairs of the Energy and Commerce Committee. You got to go back quite a ways before you find a physician who was chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Well, in fact, back in those days, they only called it the Commerce Committee. So that was 1833 to 1837. Dr. Joel Sutherland was chairman of the Commerce Committee and also a physician and also a lawyer and a lot of other things. But I think we're due. I think Texas is due. And no question about it, medicine is due. This conference that you're doing this morning, talking about being at the crossroads, is really exactly right. It's exactly on target because you can see in so many ways, whether you talk about policy, whether you talk about the political landscape, we're clearly at a crossroads. I've got some things I want to share with you this morning. I'm going to be talking a little bit about innovation, certainly the regulatory environment, the regulatory certainty that we'd all like to see, and flexibility when you talk about regulations. On the crossroads aspect, you turn on the news and you see the climate activists, you see the Green New Deal. There are people who are lobbying hard for massive changes in our society writ large, but particularly in the energy sector. Green New Deal, Paris Climate Accord, only more government intrusion and less in the way of innovation. You know, in many ways, this election cycle, we know who's likely to be on the Republican side of the equation, the presidential level. We don't know on the other side, but I would further posit to you that I think the free enterprise system is going to be on the ballot a year from now, and it's something that we do need to bear in mind. And President Reagan, Mary Space's old boss, is famous for saying, "We who live in free market societies believe that growth and prosperity and ultimately human fulfillment are created from the bottom up and not from the government down." Truer words were never spoken. It's been proven time and time again. In energy policy, and particularly in the state of Texas, limited government and trust in the marketplace have made the state a model for the energy ecosystem in the nation. I can remember one of the advantages of being on the Energy and Commerce Committee for so long. I remember hearings back in 2008 about when the price of gasoline topped somewhere north of $4.50 a gallon. And I remember flying home, as I do every week, and flying over the freeways that are just north of the DFW airport, which essentially it's a district that I'm fortunate enough to represent. Those freeways, of course, generally I'd look out the window of the airplane to see what kind of traffic problems I was going to face going home. But in those days, in July of 2008, you looked out the window and there weren't many cars on the road because no one could afford to drive. And unfortunately, that set the stage for what happened next when Lehman Brothers declared bankruptcy and the economy took a nosedive. I will just share with you one observation from the time that I've served in Congress. I've served, current time, there is arguably a very good economy, maybe the best economy we've ever seen. I've also served when there is a bad economy. And my observation is, and I don't mean this to be selfish, but I look a lot smarter if the economy is good. When the economy is bad, no one in Congress looks good. When the economy is good, yeah, you're willing to cut us some slack, and we all look like we bring something to the argument. But as goes Texas, so goes the nation. The nation is enjoying an incredible economy right now. The economic engine, really the envy of the free world, as President Trump frequently reminds us. And it is Texas that leads that vanguard in the nation's economy. Our energy, it needs to be affordable. It needs to be reliable. And fortunately in Texas it is plentiful. Texas produces and consumes more energy than any other state. Texas has a winning all-of-the-above strategy, and that includes all types of power generation and the technologies that best fit the needs of a diverse and growing market. So if you believe that all good things come from the government, you would think that, the government needs to mandate or perhaps impose taxes or reward or award incentives, and that's how we get clean energy to the market. But over the past decade, clean energy has taken over Texas in a big way. The Energy Reliable Council of Texas, natural gas, wind, and nuclear make up 80% of the state's fuel mix as of 2019, and this happened without a carbon tax. I like to talk about clean as well as renewable because clean is important, and you're all familiar with the statistic that from 2005 to present, the amount, if carbon is indeed a culprit, the amount of carbon emitted into the atmosphere by the United States of America has diminished each and every single year. Originally, that was thought to be secondary to the slowdown in the economy, but actually the contribution of natural gas to the generation of electricity, certainly that's made a difference in our state, and it's made a difference around the country. Earmark is a bad word, and I get that. But I also acknowledge that it was an earmark that allowed the demonstration project to proceed, that created the correct environment for Devon Energy to figure out a way to extract natural gas from tight shale formations. And that really has been the game changer. It's been the game changer in the environment, certainly energy production, and I would argue in the economic outlook. Previously, this was impractical, and people might have known the gas-containing shale was down there, but literally it was something you just had to blast through or bore through on your way to a more productive strata. Now, with hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling, my home, that is, I can't say the energy is in my backyard, but it is literally under the feet under the ground of the 26th district with the Barnett Shale. And making these resources available to Texas and the country really has accrued to the benefit of the entire country. When I first arrived in Congress, the discussion was, and this was 2003, 2005 was my first year on the Energy and Commerce Committee. All of the discussion was natural gas is limited. The supply is limited. What are we going to do for the feedstock for fertilizers for our farms? Where are we going to get the natural gas? In fact, our committee was involved in some of those early discussions. You all remember, Senator Markey over on the other side of the rotunda. He was actually on the committee at the Energy and Commerce Committee when I started, and he had this big blow-up poster of some Norwegian ship that was going to import natural gas from the North Sea, and he had a picture of the ship in the harbor at Three Rivers Harbor in Boston and a picture of the school on top of the hill, and he said this ship is going to be a risk. If it blows up, the school will blow up and we will be the greatest mass murderers since Adolf Hitler. So obviously got my attention that morning that, hey, this is kind of a big deal to have to import this natural gas, but nevertheless, LNG facilities for exportation were all what we were discussing when we did the Energy Policy Act of 2005. And then very quickly it all changed. And with fracking, natural gas became much more abundant, so no one is talking about it being a commodity that's in danger of disappearing. In fact, now those same LNG facilities are finally being licensed for export, so that natural gas that we're producing in our country can in fact be a counterweight to natural gas delivered by Vladimir Putin and the country of Russia. It is a big deal that is now available. From the Energy and Commerce Committee perspective, Chairman Barton worked for years to lift the export ban on crude oil. Finally did so a couple of Congresses ago. After we replaced Secretary Moniz with Secretary Perry, the licensing for exporting liquefied natural gas actually occurred, and it has been a game changer as far as how Texas is able to contribute not just to the economic picture in this country, but the entire world. The availability of nuclear power, that has seemed like it was a difficult deliverable for that to happen. I remember when I was in high school, which was a long time ago, they talked about a nuclear power plant somewhere south of the Metroplex. This went through various iterations, so long enough for me to graduate from high school, college, graduate school, medical school, residency at Parkland Hospital, and be in private practice for 4 years before the first electrons came down the wire from Comanche Peak Nuclear Power Plant. But now that plant continues to provide a significant amount of the base load energy requirement, and it does so quietly, it does so in a way that's non-polluting, and it does so really with a reliability that is actually enviable. When we did the Energy Policy Act of 2005, there was a provision in there for loan guarantees for expansion of existing nuclear power plants. We all get it that nobody wants a nuclear power plant to be built next to their town, but where the facilities already exist, if the footprint is acceptable to expanding that facility, that was the vision of the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Unfortunately, that still has not happened because the bureaucracy around that energy is intense. And the other problem is the availability of long-term nuclear storage. Remember the morning we woke up and saw the tidal wave hit the country of Japan and the problems that occurred at Fukushima, the power plant, where the rods that had been kept in cooling pools because they had no place to put their spent nuclear fuel. We've got facilities like that in this country. Yucca Mountain is the designated repository for long-term nuclear fuel. There is, in fact, an amendment up in the markup in Energy and Commerce that I will be going to right after this that will try to facilitate that, try to streamline that. It is something that the House has embraced several times in the past. The difficulty has been the United States Senate and the fact that previously the Senate Majority Leader was from Nevada and had the ability to put a hold on that. At some point, we will have to come to an agreement about what is the fate of long-term nuclear storage. I've been to Yucca Mountain. It is a reasonable option and one that we as ratepayers have paid for over the years. The district that I represent, I'm a customer of CoServe, which is a rural electrical co-op. CoServe also has a solar farm not too far from my house, so days I want to feel morally superior, when I flip on the light switch, I tell myself, well, that was probably solar-generated power, not coal-generated power. Indeed, in Texas, we phased out a lot of the coal power plants. Solar is an option. Recognize that it's not going to be suitable for the base load, but it can help with providing the overall amount of energy that's required in a state that, if we are energy constrained during the hottest months of the year, that is actually a threat to people's health. Everyone forgets that France, back in 2003, lost more people that summer to heat-related illness than really any time that I could remember, and it really underscored just how deadly heat can be if we don't have the ability to provide air conditioning when we need it. Governor Perry is the outgoing Secretary of Energy. We have a new secretary coming in. Secretary Perry has been a great partner. Obviously, he was our governor for 14 years. There was a day back in 2007 in the Subcommittee of Energy and the Energy and Commerce Committee where we were debating a bill called the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. This was the bill that caused George Will to lament in December of 2007 that the United States Congress, which only has two jobs, defend the border and deliver the mail, had spent the entire year trying to outlaw Mr. Edison's signature achievement, which was providing the incandescent bulb. I argued against that in subcommittee. I argued against it in full committee. I argued against it on the House floor. Every year and I lost all of those arguments. Every year after that, I would take an amendment on our appropriations bills to say, Department of Energy, no money for finalizing these rules at the Department of Energy. I got a lot of complaints from a lot of people because I was obstructing that. And then when Governor Perry became Energy Secretary, he actually took the burden from me and said, the Department of Energy is not going to finalize those rules. It wasn't a question of preferring one light bulb over another, and I take a good deal of grief in the blogosphere for this, but trusting consumers to make the right choice, or what is the right light bulb to purchase for their home. And do we trust the consumer to make the right choice? Are they not smart enough to make that choice? Do we have to make it for them as the government? Well, the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007 said, yeah, the government has to make that choice. And here's the thing. The energy efficiency standards that were prescribed in the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007 were to go into effect in 2012, and the technology actually didn't exist until just a year ago, or a year or two ago, to allow those LED bulbs to actually be competitive with what was available on the stores, the shelves of our Home Depot stores in the incandescent bulb. We're at a crossroads. You all are in the forefront of making sure we drive the correct way. I will just submit to you that I believe Texas has made a decision as to which road to take. I think Texas has made the right decision, and my job now is to ensure, as goes Texas, so goes the nation. Thanks for having me here this morning. I appreciate it.